Okay, I'm going to call to order the Washoe County Planning Commission for Tuesday, February 4th, 2020. March. Excuse me. Oh, March 3rd, 2020. Okay, can we have roll call? Determination of a quorum.
Larry Chesney.
Here.
Francine Donchik.
Here.
James Barnes.
Here.
Thomas Bruce.
Here.
Sarah Savelchek. Here. Kate Nelson is absent. We have a quorum.
Okay. Commissioner Savelchek, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. See, Council Edwards, could you read the ethics law announcement for us?
Commissioners are reminded that if with respect to any matter or any person coming before the commission today, 1, you have received a gift or loan. 2, you have a pecuniary interest. 3, you have a commitment in a private capacity, such as a family, employment, business, or similar relationship. Or 4, you have provided representation or counseling before an agency to a person or entity for compensation within the last year on a matter being considered tonight. Then you must disclose that gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation at the time the matter is being considered. And you must furthermore abstain from deliberation or voting on the matter if it is clear that the gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation would materially affect the independence of judgment of a reasonable person. Commissioners are also reminded that under the Planning Commission rules, if you have had any contact outside this meeting with any persons interested in a matter coming before the commission today, you should disclose the nature of that contact at this meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Lloyd, could you read the appeal process for us, please?
Most decisions rendered by the Planning Commission are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Planning Commission and you want to appeal its action, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is signed by the Planning Commission Chair and or the Secretary of the Planning Commission, filed with the Secretary of the Planning Commission, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and the application fee.
Thank you. And we'll move on to item 5, general public comment. Do we have any general public comment?
We do. Alexander Profont.
Good evening. My name is Alexander Profont. I'm a candidate for the District 1 Planning Commissioner seat, and I wanted to thank you to the District Attorney, Mr. Edwards, for helping me this week. I have a general public announcement for District 1 and the whole county. I, as well as the community members up in Incline Village, will be hosting a neighborhood watch program hosted for all of us at the Incline Village Crystal Bay Community Room at the library on March 6th, Friday at 6:30 p.m., which will be hosted by Deputy Teresa Keela with the Washoe County Sheriff's Office in order to answer any questions in lieu of the short-term rental issues and nuisance issues, and in order to help us understand how to best utilize Washoe County resources through the Sheriff's Department and specifically the substation at Incline Village Crystal Bay. Also, I have a need for clarification, which may be addressed after or any time, regarding the Incline Village Crystal Bay Citizens Advisory Board Authority and whether and how they are able to approve or recommend based on certain projects that are put before them. I attended the CAB meeting last night. It was great. There were 2 projects put forth, but I was uncertain as to whether or what their authority actually was. And finally, I have a map of District 1. The planning, the technical advisory GIS department provided it to me, and I wanted to just show you what it was and let you see how great it looks when it's so big in large format. And also would request that in the future, because I hope to get more of these, If we could have them accept a check or a cash in lieu of a credit card online, that would be great. So I'll just unroll this and show this to you, and thank you. So you can see all the outlines of the Citizens Advisory Board. And it's big, so it's helpful to have this large and in paper format so that if somebody who has sightedness issues needs to actually get up with a magnifying glass or something, it's easier for them to see. And kudos to that staff.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
No further public comment.
Okay. Seeing no further public comment, do we have any discussion or a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
Say second.
Motion by Commissioner Savilichek, second by Commissioner Doncheck. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Do we have any discussion or a motion to approve the minutes of the February 4th, 2020?
Motion to approve?
Second.
First, motion by Commissioner Doncheck, second by Commissioner Savilichek. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Move on to planning items, and planning item 8A is a possible action to approve a resolution for the appreciation of service for Philip Horan. Commissioner, or Secretary Lloyd, would you like to read the proclamation, please?
Would love to, thank you. Yeah, this is a resolution of the Washoe County Planning Commission expressing appreciation to Philip Horan for his service to Washoe County. Whereas Commissioner Horan has, since his appointment by the Washoe County Commissioners on July 1, 2014, been an active and interested member of the Planning Commission of Washoe County, serving the county with dedication and distinction. Whereas Commissioner Horan has, since his appointment nearly 6 years ago, maintained and manifested a sincere interest in the furtherance of good planning principles and their application to regional issues as well as the community service program of Washoe County. Whereas Commissioner Horan was reelected unanimously by the Washoe County Board of Commissioners as Washoe County Planning Commissioner for District 1 effective July 1, 2018. Whereas Commissioner Horan has, since his appointment nearly 6 years ago, served the Washoe County Planning Commission with reliable attendance, patience, courtesy, and careful attention to all attending parties. Whereas Commissioner Horan served on the Board of Adjustment for 8 years, from 2006 to 2014, prior to his appointment to the Planning Commission, and between those two appointments has served the community faithfully for 14 years. Whereas Commissioner Horan always treated applicants, staff, and the public with dignity and respect, demonstrating the highest professional, moral, and ethical principles. Now therefore be it resolved that the Washoe County Planning Commission does hereby express their deep appreciation to Philip for his extraordinary concern and devotion to the improvement of the community's well-being through the development, implementation, and administration of quality planning in Washoe County, and be it further resolved that the County Planning Commission will miss the contributions of Philip Horan and extend their best wishes for a happy and prosperous future.
Thank you. So I think that it's probably appropriate that we just go down the row here and roast Philip and express our appreciation to him personally, because he's personally been a good friend, and he's been a tremendous contributor to this commission, and he's going to be missed by me, that's for sure. So, Commissioner Vilchak.
Thank you, Chair Chesney. Yes, Mr. Horan, you have been, it's been a pleasure to serve with you during my tenure with the Planning Commission. I appreciate your sense of humor, I appreciate your dedication, and you really will be missed, and please come by and see us. And then now that you're in the city of Reno boundary, you could consider that Planning Commission, because they could certainly use your expertise.
Commissioner Bruce.
Yes, I've enjoyed it. It's been shorter than some of the others as far as sharing time with you, but I've enjoyed it. I've found you interesting and knowledgeable and appreciated very, very much. And as to the Planning Commission of Reno, remember, no good deed goes unpunished.
Phil, I don't
Commissioner
know.
Dodgeck.
I don't know if I can trump on that, but I want to say that it's been a pleasure working with you. Your knowledge, insight, and spot-on questions that helped all of us through all of this times will be greatly missed. And of course, you're definitely welcome to come visit us anytime and speak up. But I don't know about Reno. You might be too much for them.
Commissioner Barnes.
Yes, Phil, I really enjoyed working with you. You're extremely knowledgeable and conscientious. I'm going to miss you, and I consider you a friend. I hope you'll keep in touch.
Okay, yeah, I was going to give you a chance to a rebuttal. Because I get the last word here, Phil.
Well, those were all very kind and generous words, and I thank you very much. I sometimes think that one of my thoughts through life has been that, generally when things like this go on, you get too much credit and then too much blame. So there's something there in the middle. I have thoroughly enjoyed working with the county over these number of years. The people that I have served with have been remarkable. I admire all of my colleagues that have served with me on both the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission. What I found with all those members, including all of you, that you brought an individual knowledge and expertise to all of the meetings. And what I appreciated most from all of the members, the professionalism, but the ability to discuss, disagree, and move forward with the best interest of the county at heart. And I think that's really important. We don't see that so often these days, I think, in public bodies. But I think this body has always exemplified that and served the public extremely well in that regard. Now, the public didn't always agree, but, that's life moves on. I really appreciated the people I've served with. Also, the staff. The staff, I think, has served the people of the county very, very well. And working with the staff has always been very pleasant. They have been generous in their time and answering questions and showing their expertise in serving the public. I think the commitment that they have showed to the community is remarkable. I congratulate you, those on the board, that for your commitment to public service. And I will miss it, and I will drop by, and you never know, I may have a public comment from time to time. So anyway, thank you very, very much.
And thank you, Phil, and you'll be sorely missed. All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you're styled for action on that, and the action would be to approve that resolution. And then in order to finish this item, you need to open the floor to public comment as well.
Motion to approve?
But we need to open it to public comment before the motion.
Before you do the motion, yes.
Okay, we have any public comment?
I have no request for public comment.
Okay. Now,
Motion to approve.
Can I say one thing, Mr. Chair?
pardon?
Certainly.
Thank you. I first worked with Mr. Haran when I took over the planning assignment in 2008, and that was 12 years ago, and that was on the Board of Adjustment when I first met him and encountered him. So I was brand new to planning back then, and I remember going to a couple of meetings and thinking to myself during those meetings, and I think I even sent an email to the county commission or the county manager back at the time and said, "Hey, you should check out this fellow that you have on your Board of Adjustment." And I sent a block of the time on the meeting. I said, "Look at this motion that he made and how detailed it was, and it tracks all the findings." I said, "I haven't been doing this for very long, but I'm pretty sure that's the way that you're supposed to do it." And so when you said during your remarks that he would be missed, I think that's an understatement, and it's been a pleasure to work with him as a planning commissioner. That's what I wanted to say.
Trevor, would you like to?
I would absolutely love to say a few things. I first met Phil in 2006 when he first served on the Board of Adjustment, and I'm truly going to miss Phil. He's been a staple here with Washoe County. It's certainly not going to be the same, you know, working with this planning commission without seeing Phil on this board. His commitment to Washoe County is second to none, and I appreciate all of his, you know, every time I've had to deal with him, whether it's in person or he'll call me prior to a meeting and ask questions, clearly vetting all of the projects and really showing a commitment to serve Washoe County. You're going to be missed, Phil. Thank you.
Okay. Now, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve, and
Commissioner Bruce makes a motion to approve the resolution. Do we have a second?
Second?
Commissioner Doncheck seconds. All in favor to approve the resolution?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to item 9, public hearings. Secretary Lloyd, would you like to talk to us about Master Plan Amendment Case Number WMPA 19-008, Sparks SOI revision?
Will do. These are two items, a master plan amendment and a regulatory zone amendment. The first is WMPA 19-008 and regulatory zone amendment WRZA 19-0008 for the Sparks SOI reversion. For possible action, hearing, and discussion to approve a resolution initiating and adopting an amendment to the Washoe County Master Plan for the purpose of assigning Washoe County Master Plan land use designation on 1,180 parcels that have been removed from the City of Sparks' sphere of influence and returned to Washoe County's jurisdiction. The subject properties will be assigned the most closely related master plan land use and designation in comparison with previous City of Sparks master plan designation, and the regulatory zone for possible action, hearing, and discussion to approve a resolution initiating and adopting an amendment to the Washoe County regulatory zone map for the purpose of assigning Washoe County regulatory zones on 1,180 parcels that have been removed from the City of Sparks' sphere of influence and returned to Washoe County's jurisdiction. The subject properties will be assigned the most appropriate regulatory zone based on its previous Washoe County regulatory zone, if applicable, or based on its current land use and lot size. The staff representing this is Daniel Kalan. And Dan?
Dan Kalon for the record. Here to present WMPA 19-0008.
Sorry, Dan.
Oh, we still have more?
Mr. Chair, you wanted
Yes.
any disclosures?
Oh, do we have any disclosures from the commission, either ex parte or?
None.
No. None.
Okay, again, Dan Kalon for the record. WMPA 19-0008 and WRZA 19-0008 for the Sparks Sphere of Influence rollback. This started on October 10th, 2019. The City of Sparks reverted its planning jurisdiction of the 1,182 parcels back to unincorporated Washoe County. Therefore, the county is updating the master plan category and regulatory zoning of each parcel in response. So I have the vicinity map here. All of the areas that are in yellow are those areas that are affected by this rollback. Those in the blue are the areas that were noticed. And the areas that are outlined and enclosed by the red line are the City of Sparks. And those with the crosshatch are those that are currently still within the City of Sparks' sphere of influence. So staff took this through a three-part process. First was to translate the City of Sparks land use category into the equivalent Washoe County Master Plan category. Then we updated the existing zoning to comply with the Master Plan category based on the current lot size and use. And then third, we just wanted to make sure that we took care of any pre-1993 legal non-conforming regulatory zoning to current zoning based on use and lot size to ensure uniform application of the development code. So the first step was the Master Plan translation. TMRPA requires that a master plan land use is transferred to a nearly equivalent land use or be subject to a strict review of the policies within the master plan. They provide us with this handy table here in table 3.3. which you can see we go from Sparks land use to Washoe County master plan categories. More specifically, these are the land use categories that Sparks have and their translation to Washoe County. So large lot residential becomes rural residential, low density residential, intermediate density residential becomes suburban residential, multifamily becomes urban residential, community facilities becomes open space, and commercial remains commercial within Washoe County. So this is how this translation looks. As you see on the left-hand side, we have the city of Sparks's land use categories, and on the right-hand side, we have the county's updated master plan categories for these areas. As you can see, a large proportion of the lots are changing from large lot residential to suburban residential. There's some minor changes in terms of large lot residential to rural residential, and likewise multifamily to urban residential. The next stage of this process is to change the regulatory zoning. This means that we have to use the master plan, which outlines the regulatory zones that are allowed in each master plan category. The goal of staff was to provide zoning that reflects the current development and lot size. And I have the master plan category table to the right-hand side of this slide. More specifically, as we get into this, you can see the highlighted orange areas are those regulatory zones that we are actually applying to the master plan categories. And I have the master plan categories on the left-hand side. So those areas that are rural residential will be zoned low-density rural. Those areas zoned suburban residential vary from low-density suburban all the way up to high-density suburban, as well as some public and semi-public facilities. The urban residential translates to low-density urban, and the commercial becomes general commercial. Lastly, the open space areas translate to either public and semi-public facilities or parks and recreation, specifically for Lazy 5 Regional Park. And this is the translation from master plan to the regulatory zone. As you can see, most of the yellow areas, the darker yellow areas, translate to various shades of purple, yellows, and oranges, which are the suburban zones. Likewise, the light yellow translates to low-density rural, which is also light yellow. And then we have some green and blue, which are public and semi-public facilities and parks and rec, respectively, which are allowed in the open space and, generally speaking, across the board in all master plan categories. The last stage is the regulatory zoning. We have a lot of old zoning on this rollback. This inhibits the uniform application of the development code due to irregular non-conforming lot size, inconsistent interpretation by staff, a number of roads that were not accepted for dedication but are currently paved over, such as Wedekind, and then potential conflicting land uses. Therefore, these must conform with the master plan category, and I've provided the general requirements for lot size here. Those land uses that are, regulatory zones that are highlighted list the minimum lot size ranging from 8-acre minimum lot size for low-density rural all the way down to 3,700 square feet for low-density urban. Likewise, for the density per dwelling unit per acre, we have the density for low-density rural being 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres, all the way up to 10 dwelling units per acre for low-density urban. This set of maps shows, the red in this set of maps shows the areas that were pre-1993 zoning and therefore do not conform with any of the current zoning. The light purple outline outlines areas that are general rural and are 10-acre lots or less in size and therefore are non-conforming. And the proposed regulatory zoning that brings it into compliance with current regulatory zoning practices as of now. Now I'm going to walk you through very quickly all of the different areas in a little bit more detail. So this area is along Pyramid Way. We start with some large lot residential, low density residential, multifamily, and these translate broadly to suburban residential, urban residential, and a little bit of open space that we see in the northwest corner. And likewise, the zoning is provided to be suburban and urban in nature, so low-density suburban all the way up to low-density urban, as well as some open space facilities. Second part, we go from large lot residential to rural residential primarily, with some suburban residential, and as well as open space, which then translates to large lot rural, low-density suburban, as well as parks and recreation and public services and semi-public services. Likewise, here we go from large lot residential and intermediate density residential to suburban residential to low-density suburban. Then in this one, we go from large lot residential to suburban residential to low-density suburban with one parcel of low-density suburban 2, which represents half-acre density, as well as a small sliver, which is currently an access road. Likewise, here we go from large lot residential to suburban residential with a little bit of commercial to low-density suburban 2, and medium-density suburban, as well as general commercial. Again, large lot residential to suburban residential to a mix of low-density suburban 2, and public and semi-public facilities for areas that are currently under roads or, I believe, the or ditch. And this one again, similar story, large lot residential, low-density suburban. And finally, this one, large lot residential, suburban residential to a mix of low-density suburban 2, medium-density suburban, and public and semi-public facilities for the water tower that is there. Notice was sent to 3,931 affected property owners within 750 feet of the affected areas. And we had a neighborhood meeting on February 5th in 2020 as a ride-along to the Spanish Springs cab, as this was closer to most of the parcels changing over. Spanish Springs cab recommended approval unanimously. However, they did request better maps, which I hope I've provided here. Staff is able to make all of the required master plan amendment findings and therefore recommends approval of the master plan amendment. Likewise, staff is able to make all of the regulatory zone amendment findings, and therefore staff recommends approval of the regulatory zone amendment. I provided a possible motion for both the master plan amendment and the regulatory zone amendment for your convenience. I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions at this time?
Just go to public comment.
Okay, then I'm going to open public comment, 3 minutes for any and all speakers. Do we have any public comment?
We do. J. Edward Parker, followed by Katie Nepper.
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, getting old is a terrible bore avoided at all cost. My name is J. Edward Parker, and my home is at 6970 Paw Drive, which is in one of these areas here that's coming back. I've lived in trepidation for many years that Sparks was going to try to annex us as they did with the regional plan. There were a group of us in Spring Creek who fought desperately and managed to keep out of the city of Sparks back then, only to be designated as within their sphere of influence, which is a threat. From my port, I look at this and I say, please, pass this. Let's move on to what we're going to do with this land. Thank you.
Thank you.
Katie Nepper, followed by Alfred Nepper.
Hi, we live on Ponderosa Drive and are here to discuss specifically the property at 1995 Ponderosa Drive and how it will be assigned the most appropriate zoning. It is not in question the property at 1995 Ponderosa was improperly and unlawfully changed by the City of Sparks from single-family residential group home to a multifamily group care facility on 6/26/19. As far back as September 2018, when we discovered a new structure had been approved by the City of Sparks in direct conflict with code and ground had not yet been broken, we went to the Sparks City Manager and the head of planning. They adamantly denied anything had been approved other than an increase in bedrooms, not an increase in occupancy. The Assistant City Attorney maintained there was no maximum term a resident could stay, so this was not transitional housing. This statement was incorrect. We subsequently met with the county head of planning who agreed with our position that the project should not proceed. He held a meeting with Sparks and got nowhere, but advised us that the facility would remain a group home with no more than 10 occupants plus a caregiver. If they occupied with more than 10, he would send out code enforcement. Sparks could not lawfully spot zone the property to multifamily, a group care facility, without going through the public notice and hearing process with the Sparks Planning Commission. This didn't happen. Prior to meeting with the city, we had met with Safe Embrace, owners of the property. Even with full knowledge, they did not care they would be in violation of the CC&Rs, of which we supplied them a copy, nor did they care that with a group home use, they could not have more than 10 occupants. We relied on the city's and county's assurances this would remain a group home. Then in July 2019, we discovered the City of Sparks had in January of 2019 approved a change in use to a group care facility with 32 occupants in direct conflict with code. Even if they had followed proper procedures with noticing, going to a group care facility is not allowed in a residential neighborhood. It is only allowed in a civic area. Ponderosa is a residential, one-block, private dead-end drive, definitely not a civic area. We attended the July 8, 2019 Sparks City Council meeting where we and our neighbors brought up all of our issues. Subsequently, we had multiple meetings with Sparks, including the mayor, city manager, and assistant city manager, where they admitted making mistakes but refused to take measures to correct them. In our meeting with the city manager, he specifically said that because of us, they were making major changes, one of them giving already developed areas in the Sparks sphere of influence back to the county. Now, my husband's turn.
Alfred Knepper, followed by Susan Fisher.
Alfred Knepper, continuing on. Safe Embrace is the owner of the property at 1995 Ponderosa Drive. The builder, whose vice president is on the Sparks City Council, must have known that a group care facility is not allowed in a residential area. Their architect knew or should have known. Therefore, Safe Embrace knew or should have known that they could not lawfully proceed, yet they did anyway. City of Sparks knew it was against code to allow such a facility. Both we and the county reminded them that prior to the change in zoning and use, no administrator had the authority to change the zoning and use. They proceeded anyway. City acknowledged they made mistakes, but since they were reminded by both us and Washoe County that a group care facility in our single-family residential neighborhood is not allowed, it was not a mistake. It was a total disregard of the law and specific rights of the rest of the residents on Ponderosa Drive. On 2/3/20, our attorney received a letter from the City of Sparks stating that due to this SOI change, quote, only Washoe County has the authority to take any action in respect to 1995 Ponderosa Drive, end of quote. We filed a complaint with the county on 2/3/20. When we heard nothing on 2/14/20, we called for an update. We were told by the Office Support Specialist in Code Enforcement that Safe Embrace, quote, had been in place for a very long time and they shouldn't be penalized if it was done in error, and the complaint had been closed. The current use has not been in place for a very long time. Safe Embrace is not being penalized since they were aware of the incompatibility of the proposed use and zoning from the beginning. To allow it to remain as is would not only be in violation, but would reward bad behavior by both Safe Embrace and the City of Sparks. It's the residents on the Ponderosa Drive who are being heavily penalized if the county does not abide by the law and rewind this by changing the status back to a group home and classifying the property as a single-family residential, the same as the other 12 properties on Ponderosa Drive. The impact on the residents of Ponderosa has already been significant. We have a volume of documentation supporting all of our efforts and the issues addressed, along with copies of the city's public records, which include their admission of the errors and their biased communications with Safe Embrace. And I'd like to add that we are in contact with Dave Solaro as well and involved, but we haven't heard back from him yet, so that's why we're doing this tonight as well. Thank you.
Susan Fisher, followed by Matthew Malloy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Susan Fisher. I own the home and reside at 3870 Isle of Skye Drive in Sparks, and I'm simply here to support staff's recommendation for the reversion of the SOI sphere of influence back to Washoe County, and we encourage you to support that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew Malloy, followed by Aaron Merritt. If we don't have a Matthew who'd like to speak, Aaron Merritt. Okay, and the last is, I am not sure on the name on this one. It looks like a Jed or a Ted.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for taking time to discuss this issue with us. I am Jed Spedlove, I'm the president of Safe Embrace at 1995 Ponderosa Avenue. This has been an ongoing contentious situation with a few of the neighbors, mostly the ones that have previously spoke here, and we have done our best over the 18 years that we've been serving this community to, and those of you that are not familiar, Safe Embrace is a domestic violence sexual assault shelter. We provide temporary housing, crisis housing, and outside of that, we also do transitional housing for those that are surviving domestic violence situations. We have a little over a few hundred emails back and forth, documentation supporting our approvals with not only the county, but also with the city of Sparks, going through planning revisions. Unfortunately, some of the citizens have not, or the neighbors have not been properly informed, and they have misinformation and have fed you misinformation this evening because the builder, well, I'd really like to point out, because one of the builder's vice president is not involved with the builder that built our shelter for us, and it was put out for a public bid, and we went with the least inexpensive bid, and it had absolutely nothing to do with any member of the City of Sparks Council. Not to mention, you just approved our most recent business license with all of the backup documentation, and so I don't know why this is still an issue, but it has been an ongoing issue for the 6 years I've been sitting on this board, and I am also here in support of reverting this back to the city and in support of the new zoning changes, because I think that it will absolutely rectify 99% of the issues. So thank you for your time.
Any
Chris?
further public comment?
We do, we have two more. Chris Crabtree, followed by Brian Benier.
Good evening. I'm generally in support of this motion. I do just want to request one small note on the hybrid zone. There's a county island that was a little bit interesting to look at on your map. It's kind of a jigsaw shape. For the most part, I support with these zoning recommendations. However, I do want to note that there is a specific parcel that is kind of split in half, both with the Washoe County as well as the city of Sparks, and that is the General Hill in that area between Satellite Drive and Sparks Boulevard. The parcel number that I'm referring to is 035-310-042. I believe it is currently zoned as an unbuildable splinter, and I recommend that it remain that way. It is a very steep hillside, and I don't believe that any construction could safely proceed on that. And I'm not sure if there's any influence that the county has with the city of Sparks, but the other half of the hill on the north side, 035-440-16, is currently zoned as a permitted use development. And if there is any influence, I would recommend that that remain either open space, again, because it is a very difficult area to build on, and it's also one of the few open-air vistas remaining in the area. There's a lot of natural wildlife there. I'm not sure if there's any endangered species there, but the ecology there is sagebrush steppes and is constantly been reduced in size in all of the northwest of the country. Other than that, I also want to note that the city of Sparks built over a parcel of land that I've come into ownership of this past year, and that is parcel 035-28320. Currently, Sparks Boulevard intersects my parcel of land, and I'm in conversation with them to correct this. However, I'm not sure what impact that has with Washoe County, considering that it is under your purview. So I just wanted to make sure that that was brought to attention, and that also should remain an unbuildable splinter of land. Thank you very much.
Brian Bunier.
Thank you, Commissioners. I live at 1211 Satellite Drive. My name is Brian Bunin, and this notice that I received is the first notice that I've had of any sort that I'm no longer part of the city of Sparks. So I am also further not clear whether or not I am affected. I am absolutely affected based on the general description here, but I have no way of knowing or finding out whether I am. So my questions are this: A, shouldn't I have been notified when this happened? B, if I am affected, what is the impact? And C, thank you for the only notice I received. That is all.
I have no further requests for public comment.
Okay. Then I'm going to close public comment. Bring it back to the commission for any questions of staff. We have no questions of staff. Okay. Do we have any
Mr. Chair,
discussion?
if I may.
Yes, you may.
It's not that, is to remind the commission and to remind the public that 3 of your members here this evening also serve on regional planning. And this went through the regional planning update. So 3 of us have lived with this for over a year, longer than that. So we're very, very well informed in terms of the process. And so that is why I have no questions for staff.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody else have any questions for staff?
Well, I have some questions. I mean, in terms of the particulars of certain parcels, I don't know if staff has made note of them or if staff has a response to what they're recommending specifically. I would like to know.
Dan, before Dan gets up there, I just want to speak in very general, broad terms about what is being requested and what is being proposed here tonight.
Well, I understand generally what's being requested, but I think it's a very good idea.
Right.
But it's a big roller, and some of the smaller acorns will get crushed.
I think you're going to find that none of the acorns are going to get crushed with this request. In fact, it's a long overdue. For the most part, these properties have been in limbo for the last 15 to 20 years. In fact, in many regards, these property owners have been passed back and forth between Washoe County and City and Sparks with a lot of cumbersome rules and regulations. I think the term taxation without representation for the last 15 years comes into play. These properties have been within Washoe County's jurisdiction, but under the planning jurisdiction of the city of Sparks. And this is going to clear up a lot of confusion, a lot of cumbersome regulations for the people that own these properties. I don't know that we can necessarily speak to any of the particulars, but if anyone has a question of a specific property, we can certainly answer that question. What you're finding is that essentially the identical use is going to be established with all of these properties. So we're not changing the use for the most part. We're not intensifying the use. Really, what you have on the property prior to the change, you're going to have on the property after the change. That in a nutshell is the request. That's what is being proposed. And Dan, if you have anything to add to that, feel free.
Just as Trevor has mentioned, pretty much what we're trying to do is maintain exactly what is currently in existence. There are some areas where we have some parcels that now have the ability to subdivide just because based on the land use translation to a master plan category, the largest lot size that we can assign them is 10 acres and they have 20 acres, or it's 5 acres, or 1 acre and they have 5 acres. We gave them the largest available lot size as opposed to specifically cutting up parcels into smaller sizes and whatnot, so as to preserve the communities as they are currently. If you have specific questions regarding the public comment, I can make
I do in particular about the apparent or what could be constructed as a fairly blasé bulldozing of ignoring what was existing legalities.
Are we referring to the group home situation?
Yes.
Okay, give me a moment. I will fast forward to the group home area here. So this is actually going right back to the issues that Trevor mentioned, which is that they were Washoe County in terms of where they're currently located and where they are now in terms of planning jurisdiction. However, they had to go through City of Sparks planning before. So at this point, we are in the situation where we have a presumably valid, and correct me if I am wrong, Nate, City of Sparks land use decision that we are required to enforce at this point. Is that correct, Nate?
So I can answer this question only in terms of the generic legal premise. If the City of Sparks had jurisdiction over a piece of property and an owner, while the City of Sparks had jurisdiction, applied for a land use approval, discretionary, ministerial, whatever, and the City of Sparks granted that approval and that use became established, the county is not going to be in a position to come back after the fact because of a rollback and eliminate an entitlement or cancel an existing use. I do not have nearly enough information as to the particular use that you're discussing right now, the safe embrace that came up during the public comment. But I can tell you this clearly enough tonight, you have absolutely no authority at all tonight to wade in and try and, give some kind of direction or set into motion some kind of direction about taking away a use on any particular piece of property, and that one as well. So I think that, to the extent that that is the crux of some of that public comment, I understand the point they're making, but this agenda item tonight is not to do that at all.
And then addressing Brian's comment in public comment, he was within the notice area, but not within the area that was being affected by the rollback itself, and I just clarified that with him.
Great, thanks, Dan. Any more questions for staff, for Dan? Okay. Then I guess I'm going to call for, if there's no more discussion between the commissioners, I'd call for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a
Commissioner
motion. I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission initiate the master plan amendment and adopt the resolution contained in Exhibit H of this staff report to amend the master plan as set forth in Master Plan Amendment Case Number WPA 19-0008, having made the following 5 findings in accordance with the Washoe County Code Section 110.820.15D, parentheses D. I further move to certify the resolution and the proposed master plan amendment in WPA 19-0008 as set forth in this staff report for submission to the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners and authorize the chair to sign the resolution on behalf. Nate, can we do both in the same voice, or do we have to do them separately?
You can do them both in the same motion.
Okay. Great. And then going to the regulatory zone amendment case, I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission initiate the regulatory zone amendment and adopt the resolution included in Exhibit I, recommending adoption of the regulatory zone amendment case number WRZA 19-0008, having made all of the following findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110.821.15. I further move to certify the resolution and proposed regulatory zone amendment in WZRA 19-0008 as set forth in this staff report for submission to the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners and authorize the chair to sign the resolution on behalf of the Washoe County Planning Commission.
Second.
Okay, we have motion by Commissioner
I'm sorry,
Doncheck, second by
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry for chiming in right now. I just want to remind the commission that this is a master plan amendment, and as such, it requires a supermajority of all of the members of, all 7 members of the board. That means all 5 of the board commission members must vote in the affirmative in order for this to pass.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion on the motion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Reluctantly, aye.
An aye is an aye. Unanimous. Okay, we're going to move on to item B. No, we already did that. Oh, no, we didn't. Okay. Regulatory zone amendment case number WRZA 19-0010 Highland Village.
Right, this regulatory zone amendment, case number WRZA 19-0010 Highland Village, for possible action, hearing, and discussion to approve a regulatory zone amendment for 2 parcels totaling 54.5 acres from low-density suburban, 1 dwelling unit per acre max, to general rural, GR, to high-density suburban, 7 dwelling units per acre, and the 3 acres that are currently GR will remain GR for Regal Holdings of Nevada LLC and Charles J. Fornaro et al., and if approved, authorize the chair to sign a resolution to this effect. Representing Washoe County is staff planner Julie Olander.
Hi, Julie.
Good evening, Julie Olander with Planning and Building. This is a zone change for 2 parcels that are off of Highland Ranch Road. The applicant is asking to change the zoning from low-density suburban, which is 1 unit per acre, to high-density suburban, which is 7 units per acre, on 2 parcels totaling 54.6 acres. There are 3.1 3 acres of the larger parcel that are zoned general rural. As you can see on this map, it's on the top part of the bright red. Those parcels are zone GR, general rural, and they will remain general rural. So the change is just to the parcels that are in the bright orange. You can see it better on the right side of this map. The 2 parcels are surrounded by, the two parcels in the surrounding areas are designated suburban residential. That's the master plan designation. And the proposed HDS is allowed in suburban residential.
The proposed HDS regulatory zone is considered highly compatible with the surrounding regulatories of low-density suburban, open space, and also the MDS, which is found in the housing developments to the west and south. And here, you can see it a little bit better here. The two parcels are currently vacant, and they are in the Sun Valley area plan, and then they're within the Sun Valley suburban character management area, which does allow the HDS zoning. The applicant states that there is a need for housing in the area, and the smaller lots tend to be more affordable. Water and sewer would be provided by the Sun Valley GID, and the GID has stated that the parcels will need to be annexed into the GID service area, and then the GID can provide the water and sewer. The sewer would go to the Tumor facility in Sparks. The Regional Transportation Commission did look at this application. They consider Highland Ranch Parkway as a 2-lane moderate access control facility, which requires a level of service D, and the level of service D is typically 17,500 average daily trips. The RTC travel demand model currently shows that Highland Ranch Road has approximately 7,200 ADTs, and then a future in 2040, the volumes will drop to approximately 4,000 ADT, and that's most likely because of some of the improvements that RTC is proposing, like Eagle Canyon is supposed to connect over to Lemon Valley, and then there is also supposed to be another extension along Sun Valley Boulevard. So with those improvements, they're anticipating that the traffic volumes will drop on Highland Ranch Parkway. Currently, the area is zoned for, these parcels will be zoned for Palmer Elementary School, which is almost across the street, Desert Sky Middle School, and then Spanish Springs High School, and then the future Hug High School, which is at Wild Creek. And the school district did comment on this and said that all schools would not be impacted by the development of these parcels. This did go before the Sun Valley CAB on January 21st, and they proposed that it not go to HDS but MDS, and they had concerns about traffic, infrastructure concerns, and then the number of allowed units. Notice was sent to approximately 160 affected property owners. I didn't receive any phone calls or emails or any correspondence. I just had the comments from the CAB. The application was sent to a variety of different agencies, and I did not receive any comments, recommendations for denial on the application. I was able to make the findings, and I provide a possible motion, and I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Okay. By the way, do we have any disclosures by any of the commissioners, either ethics or expert pertain? No. Okay. So, do we have an applicant's presentation?
I don't believe the applicant's here. I know he was noticed, so I'm a little, oh, he is here. Oh, so sorry. All right, yeah, they are here, excuse me. The applicant is available for questions.
Okay. Guess we'll open this up to public comment then.
First, I'm going to apologize for the last name here. Judy Heloish, I believe, and followed by Mark Newman.
Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for listening to my concerns. I live on the north side of the Fernaro properties and off of Apple Blossom Road. My address is 6375 Noyes Court. I have lived there for almost 30 years, and I'd like to state that what I'm going to tell you about is in actuality truth. I have lived there for, like I said, over 30 years, and I have experienced earthquake damage from one of the three faults that goes along from Apple Blossom southward through Fenaro's property. I'm concerned that with the change in zoning, we're going to find an increased number of people susceptible to damage and possibly death due to these earthquakes. You've talked about possibly 350 residences going into that area. With approximately 3 to 4 persons per residence, that's well over 1,000 people that could be impacted by earthquake damage. Also, in addition to traffic concerns, nobody has taken into account that I've heard that the view is going into place and construction is supposedly undergoing now. That view is less than a mile down the road from Fornaro's property and accesses onto Highland Ranch Parkway. That is due to go up to 1,800 units. With access to that area and Highland Ranch Parkway, that puts an undue burden, and I think it's unfair for the residents in the Sun Valley area to have to wait 20 years, according to what we've just been told, for new access roads to be placed to lessen the traffic along Highland Ranch Parkway. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you.
Mark Newman, followed by Alan Nichols.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mark Newman. I live at 845 Cloudy Court, Sun Valley, Nevada. My backyard is one of these that are going to be facing into this new housing complex. And at the low-density housing complex, the way they originally are neighbors, as it said in the card, seven of them live in New Jersey, one in Pennsylvania, and one in Key West, Florida. I don't consider those guys too much of our neighbors. I don't mind it being stuck with the low density, which was originally planned, but I think the high density is going to put added much more traffic into the area, especially with all the homes that are going down Highland Ranch right now. Right now, Highland Ranch Road through Midnight, Lightning, Magenta, and onto 7th Street, you can wait sometimes 6 lights for it to change because of the traffic that goes through Spanish Springs to the North Valleys and the North Valleys coming into the city of Sparks. And an added burden of a high-density housing, I wish you would stay with the original thing and what the Sun Valley grid went with. Thank you.
Alan Nichols, followed by Carmen Ortiz.
My name is Alan Nichols. I live at 7237 Leonardo Court, Highland Ranch. My wife and I moved here about 8-9 years ago from Rockwall County, Texas, and Kaufman County, Texas, where we own 3 properties. Had the pleasure to meet Francine and Terry, working for Chuck Allen and David Ballum, and really fine people. So my career has been building projects in 20 countries for people that have a lot of money and don't ask a lot of questions. So I get the hardballs. And I looked at this and I said, wow, you know, what do you want to do? Where are your resources and when do you want to have it happen? So I looked at the water, I looked at the wells, I looked at the earthquakes. When we moved here from Texas, we hired a geologist to inspect all of the buildings that we wanted to purchase for the earthquake issues and the foundations that were put on uncompacted soil. And we found, to our dismay, many, many structures in this area that had cracked foundations. So we also looked for an area that didn't have a lot of traffic and had good schools. And Highland Ranch is a pretty good community because the homes are constructed correctly, and there's easy access to it, and we have good schools. So in the fine print, it says, well, we originally wanted to have low-density housing, and that's a certain number of vehicles in and out every day. And if we move it to high density, that brings in a whole new problem for guys like me that have to make it happen. It means I have to provide a road, and I can't do it after the buildings are built. I have to do it before they're built. So I don't see the planning, and the planning people have done a nice job, but I'd like to see a little bit more physical data on the soils, on the water. Where is the water gonna come from? The sewers, the connectivity, so that people can understand how long it's gonna take to make this happen. And I don't see that evidence. And I'm just a guy that has to do it. So, and I happen to live there. So one of the problems I have is I have to go back and tell my wife, looks like it's gonna work or it's completely crazy. And it really doesn't feel right. From the standpoint of view of the traffic and the resources. Are we gonna have to dig deeper wells to supply these units on this 54 acres? I haven't heard any comment
Sir,
on
your
that.
time's up.
Have I reached my end of time?
Get it done now.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate your help, and I look forward to what your result is going to be. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Carmen Ortiz, followed by Jay Parker.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Carmen Ortiz. I'm the chair of the Sun Valley Citizen Advisory Board. The comments of the Sun Valley Citizen Advisory Board meeting are in the staff reports that you all have. I want everyone to know that I completely understand the need for affordable housing in this area, and we are not opposed to this project going forward. However, there are some great concerns regarding the safety of the residents that may purchase this affordable housing, including how are those children going to walk along Highland Ranch Parkway, which currently has no sidewalks? How are they going to get across Highland Ranch Parkway to access Virginia Palmer Elementary School, which they are currently zoned for? The subdivision is really close. It's a few hundred yards from the school. According to the Washoe County School District Transportation Policy, elementary students are eligible to ride the bus if the shortest walking distance is more than 1.25 miles. That will not be the case. Middle school students are eligible to walk if it's more than 2.25 miles, which is not the case. These kids will be walking 1.9 miles every day to the new middle school. For high school students, the walking distance is more than 3 miles, which means these kids will get to ride the bus. But if they miss the bus, then what? Which is exactly what happened at Desert Skies Middle School. So now you have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who miss the bus. They can't walk more than 2.5 miles home. It's not safe. So the parents have to leave work to come get them. There's no, RTC doesn't go up there yet. Okay, plus there's a park nearby on the opposite side of Highland Ranch. These are concerns that we have as a community regarding the safety of those children. The people and families who are going to purchase that affordable housing need to be safe. Currently, staff is requesting to approve this project with one entrance and one exit onto Highland Ranch Parkway at Midnight Drive. Will that be a stop sign? Will that be a stoplight? What's the plan? The planned decrease in traffic is in 2040. How do you plan to address the exponential growth in traffic over these next 20 years? RTC had planned an expansion 20 years ago, which we are still waiting for from Spanish Springs out. So the next 20 years, I don't see how it's gonna drop from as projected in your report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jay Parker, followed by Sherry Fairchild.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I was an appraiser for 32 years, 15 of those years in service to this county before I retired. I'm well aware of the land uses because I've seen them all over California and in quite a bit of the western Nevada area. I looked at this area a couple of times when they were doing potential subdivisions up there, and I look at it and it's going to require, in order to make this development work, extensive cuts and fills, and I've seen nothing about that in here. On top of that, you've already got a lot of these small lot subdivisions down on Sparks Boulevard, thanks to the city of Sparks. When you get into something like this and you start building all these small houses, you overburden and overbear the community. You have to consider your services, and in this area, we don't have the services to support this kind of a development. I urge you to limit this to 4 units per acre if it's going to be developed at all, and that a handbook be developed for the development of this area. Thank you.
Sherry Fairchild, followed by Tom Corson.
Good evening, Chair. I'm Sherry Fairchild. My address is 6471 Edisto Court. I've lived there for 22 years in Sun Valley, and I do not encourage this. We are seeing terrible things happening in our neighborhood, a lot of graffiti, a lot of displaced cars, a lot of it happening because we welcomed a new middle school. It's just a lot to happen right now, a lot of burden on our neighborhood, and to welcome more homes, and the traffic is horrible. We're seeing a lot of traffic come through our neighborhood because they're cutting through, trying to get off of Highland Ranch. So they're cutting through our neighborhood. A lot of people won't stop at those stop signs. We're worried a child is gonna get killed. Somebody is gonna get hurt. Our homeowner association office has a window that sees that stop sign. We have to call the police all the time and ask them to please patrol our neighborhood because we're afraid someone's gonna get killed because someone won't stop at that stop sign. They won't stop for the school bus that puts their stop sign out. So we are trying to do our best as our HOA board and our HOA community to watch and try to alert everybody, but it's really a big burden on us. And you bring in some more people and it's just gonna be really bad, especially RTC isn't gonna put that route through for 20 years. And the New Sky Ranch school, it's already at capacity. It had to put in a mobile already, and it's a brand new school. So I don't know I work for the school district, so I'm puzzled by that because I'm like, they're already over capacity and they're a brand new middle school. So you bring in some more people? I don't know. So please plan ahead, look ahead. Don't burden us some more because we can't handle it. Our road is not gonna put more people. They're just gonna keep cutting through our homes. And I mean, our whole community is bleeding because we've got pedestrians being hit. And it's happening everywhere. And I don't know, our community is hurting out there. We don't have the services we need, and we need help. So please don't burden us with more. Thank you.
Tom Corson.
Tom Corson, 150 Timberline View Court, Reno. Thank you for listening to my question. I really only question leaving it looks like some hilly areas as general rule, which is typically for large parcels, which this is currently. There's a lot of zoning that can be done on general rule that is really not compatible with the high density. Like a slaughterhouse could be placed there. It may be hard to do, but it could be done. And then you can see an uproar from, people in the neighborhood. So I think that you shouldn't allow those small 3 parcels to remain general rule and find something that could keep that either open space or a little bit more compatible with a high density. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further public comment.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the commissioners for the staff or anybody?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Savolacek.
Thank you. This would be for staff. In those designated areas that you are being left general rural, are they slope restricted?
Julia Lander with Planning and Building, yes, those are the reason they are Zone GR. At one point, that was sort of the standard way of handling slope, was to designate a GR. We did talk about designating an open space, but let me go back to some of those parcels cross the property line. So we felt pretty comfortable leaving them GR. They are on slope, so it's not likely that anything will be built on them. It's possible they could come in and build a single-family house on them, but they would have to deal with the slope.
Okay, so, I mean, I think, you know, when we have slope restrictions, so that is designated in the staff report that those areas are 30% or above, so no building would take place.
So there's nothing that totally prevents you to build on 30%. There are restrictions when you get into that 30% slope. The regional plan has direction, as you probably well know, but our code has requirements that they have to do certain things to be able to build on that type of slope. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you.
So
And I
it
guess,
is possible. The likelihood of it would be very challenging. And then the access and so forth, there's a variety of things they would have to look at to access those areas. So it would be, it would be challenging, as I said.
so this is either for Mr. Lloyd or for Mr. Edwards, but what's before us for consideration is to move from low-density suburban to high-density suburban. So what the CAB recommended for medium-density suburban is not before us this evening.
Yeah, that is, the request before you tonight is to move from low-density suburban to high-density suburban. So, again, that is, yeah, you would have to make a motion based on the requested application.
Thank you. Nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioners have questions for staff? Okay, then I'm going to close the public. Thomas? I'm going to close the public hearing. Bring it back to the commission for discussion. Any discussion? Okay, then I guess I'll call for a motion.
Mr. Bruce
Paul.
doesn't.
Well, I was going to say, I have, since I travel that way.
Speak into your microphone,
I'm sorry.
please.
I generally talk loud. I feel that there are problems with transportation. I feel as far as I think Sun Valley Boulevard ought to be 4 lanes with sidewalks all the way out to Highland Ranch Parkway, and Highland Ranch Parkway needs to be 4 lanes, and that'll still probably not be enough with sidewalks. I've seen people, and I drive that, so I think that there are safety issues, and they will be exacerbated with one inlet and outlet. And so I seriously question the advisability of high density. I guess I could settle for medium density.
Well, that's not the,
I understand.
that's not the motion we're dealing
Well-
with tonight. So I thank you for your comment, and I have to agree that Highland Ranch Parkway is not much of a corridor, especially for this kind of density, but we're not approving a project here, we're approving zoning, and so that's what I got to say. Anybody else got anything to say? Then I'll call for a motion. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Civilcheck.
If you'll indulge me for one moment, I was looking for agency comment with regards to the school district. I'm having a hard time finding that. Thank you. Okay, this is to capacity, but it doesn't reference safe routes to school. So, okay, thank you. Thank you. With regards to item 9B, regulatory zone amendment, case number WRZA 19-0010 Highland Village, I move after giving reasoned consideration to the informed information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission deny the resolution included in, and recommend a denial of the regulatory zone amendment case WRZA 19-0010 in terms of not being able to make the findings. For me, I cannot make findings in terms of, just one moment, I'm just looking at compatibility to the surrounding area. In terms of public safety, and I'm just, and transportation, there's a lack of transportation.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion of denial from Commissioner Civilcheck and a second from Commissioner Doncheck. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of denial of the amendment? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimously denied.
Mr. Chair, if I can read the appeal procedure, please.
Sure.
All right, most decisions rendered by the Planning Commission are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Planning Commission and you want to appeal its action, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is signed by the Planning Commission Chair and/or the Secretary of the Planning Commission, filed with the Secretary of Planning Commission, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and application fee.
Okay. Moving right along, we're going to go to item D, or excuse me, item C, special use permit, case number WSUP 20-0001, Fish Springs Solar.
Okay, this is a request for possible action, hearing, and discussion to approve, one, a special use permit for a 300-megawatt solar energy center, renewable energy use type, on 2,191 non-contiguous acres, and for major grading consisting of 1,490 acres of grading with cuts of 351,000 cubic yards and fills of 337,000 cubic yards. And two, a variance for a reduction of minimum landscape standards and parking requirements. This is a project of regional significance, which will also require approval by the regional planning authorities in addition to Washoe County. And representing Washoe County in this matter is planner Dan Kalan.
Dan, just a second. Do we have any disclosures by commissioners, ethics or ex parte communications on this project? Okay, Dan, floor is yours.
Dan Kalan, Washoe County Planning, once again. I have before you Fish Springs Solar, WSUP 20-0001. As Trevor mentioned, the applicant is requesting to establish a 300-megawatt renewable energy use facility on 2,191 non-contiguous acres. Applicant is also requesting a major grading permit, as well as requesting to vary the parking and landscaping standards to require no paved parking or planting requirements. So I have provided the vicinity maps up on the screen ahead of you. The location is approximately 45 miles north of Downtown Road through BLM land. This map here shows the outline of where the solar panels will be. Everything that is in that salmon color is an individual solar panel. So you can see the extent of all of the solar panels on this project as fully built out. So the proposed facility will be post-driven for the proposed solar arrays. The facility will contain 300 megawatts of battery storage, and this facility will be unmanned for large swaths of the year, other than quarterly maintenance. So I've provided an elevation of what the solar panels will be like. As you can see, the solar panels are driven into the ground, which is mowed and separated from each other by approximately 20-foot clear paths with a 16-foot service path between. And these solar panels will be 8 to 10 feet in height. This is the elevations of the battery containers. These are above ground and scattered throughout the site. Likewise, this is an elevation of the control enclosure in which the applicant will be monitoring this site remotely. Now on to the analysis. So all of the relevant parcels within the large acreage that is proposed are zoned general rural. Renewable energy production use type is permissible in general rural zoning with an approved special use permit, which is before you today. General rural regulatory zoning is required to have a front and rear setback of 30 feet and a side setback of 50 feet. Now, the applicant is proposing to place 5 Connex boxes or shipping containers per our code to be located permanently on the site. Washoe County Code, section 110.306.10G, subsection 2 requires that shipping containers be muted, solid color that blends with surrounding vegetation, structures, topography, and remain free from severe damage and or rust. Now, this project is going to be split into 2 phases. The application writes that they will have 400 peak employees during construction. The first phase is anticipated to take 10 months for 100 megawatts of power generation, and phase 2 is anticipated to take an additional 12 months for an additional 200 megawatts, pending negotiations with NV Energy at this time. That being said, in order to build this, they will be required to create some sort of contractor yard, and these must comply with Washoe County Code 110.310.45. The applicant is requesting to waive the requirement for parking to provide paved parking. They are anticipating 20 peak employees to provide maintenance every 3 months. Parking per Washoe County Code is 1 space per employee. Staff does not support the variation of this standard, as we want to ensure that there are 20 paved parking spaces, 1 handicap space, and all of the loading and maneuvering areas need to be paved in order to prevent spill off from oil or leaks, etc. However, the applicant is also requesting to vary the landscaping standards do not require trees or the 10% lot coverage. These parcels do not directly abut any legally developed parcels with a residential use. Therefore, per our code, there is no screening required. However, staff does agree with the applicant that landscape planting standards should not apply to this development. As you can see here from the site photos, the area does not have very many trees, and therefore requiring 1 tree every 50 feet of road frontage would be out of character for the rest of the area, as well as a burden on water resources. The applicant will, however, fence the perimeter of the proposed facility with a 7-foot high chain link fence painted Sudan brown with a 1-foot barbed wire top. It looks like this. The applicant is also proposing to install 14-foot down shielded security lighting on motion sensors in order to make sure that all lighting complies with Washoe County Code, section 110.14-21. Now on to the major grading. The applicant is proposing 1,490 acres of grading with no import or export expected, an estimated 351,000 cubic yards of cut and 337,000 cubic yards of fill. The applicant is proposing to mow down the vegetation in order to preserve soil stability. This still constitutes grading, as our code outlines grading as any disturbance of the natural state of the landform. And the applicant is proposing only to disturb the soil for post buildings and the substation as part of this application. Washoe County is requiring that the applicant submit full grading plans in accordance with all the requirements in Article 438 grading. as a condition of approval for this application. As you can see here, all of the areas that are in gray are those areas that are supposed to be access roads. However, we are missing contours and cuts and fills and drainages. The applicant is also proposing a sign 4 by 8 feet. This meets the requirements of the sign code per Washoe County Table 110-505-15.1, which is highlighted on the right. So the application was provided, notice was sent to 50 affected property owners within 750 feet of the site. And the applicant presented before the Gerlach Empire Citizens Advisory Board meeting on February 13th, 2020. There were a variety of concerns brought up at the CAB, including fire impacts, battery types, and potential for chemical leakages, how the unmanned facility would respond to security threats, any construction impacts during the phase 1 and phase 2 of the construction of the facility, effects of drainage on neighboring properties, as well as the heat island effect. The CAB did not vote on this item. However, they did generally comment that they approved the project without a vote. Now, I do want to direct your attention, there should be a piece of public comment that arrived late that should be on the dais for you, basically stating that they are opposed to the facility. Now, the applicant did provide feedback to the CAB as they are required to per the area plan. The energy storage system, the batteries come with a built-in fire suppression system. The site will be remotely monitored via that station. All the roads and culverts will be maintained to county standards. They're actually anticipating less workers in order to construct this facility than they originally requested in the application. So instead of 400, they're looking at 250. They specifically addressed the CAB's concerns about noise from wind on slatted fences in chain link fence, and they have agreed not to build a slatted fence. And they are willing to work with neighboring property owners in order to work through any drainage issues. They also mentioned that they had not had any impacts on neighboring tree farms and prior solar projects that they had created. Therefore, staff is able to make all 5 of the special use permit findings and recommends approval with the conditions that are attached for this special use permit. And I have provided a possible motion for your convenience. If you have any questions, I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I guess we'll move on to public comment. Or does the applicant have a presentation?
The applicant is here, and I do believe they have a presentation.
I'm sorry.
Good evening, and I'm Melissa Kruger, and I'm one of the developers on the Fish Springs Ranch Solar Project. Before I begin, I wanted to thank the council for taking the time to give us an opportunity to talk to you this evening, as well as thank Dan and the rest of the Washoe County Planning team for being so helpful throughout this process. No problem, no problem. Okay, no problem. No. Not a problem. Perfect. So I'll start just by giving a brief overview of NextEra Energy as a company, and then I'll kind of give a little bit more details on the project, and then open the floor to any questions that you may have. So NextEra Energy is one of the largest electric power and energy infrastructure companies in North America and is currently a Fortune 200 company. We have two main businesses, Florida Power and Light and NextEra Energy Resources. NextEra Energy Resources is the world's largest generator of renewables from the wind and sun, with over 21 megawatts of net generating capacity in our portfolio. Given this expansive portfolio, we have the expertise and resources to deliver on all of our commitments, and we balance sheet finance all of our projects, as well as have long-standing relationships with all of our suppliers, and we own and operate a majority of our projects. As you can see, NextEra has assets all across of North America, and we are constantly adding more projects to the portfolio. At any given time, we have just about 2,400 megawatts of renewables under development. So just to kind of shed some more light on the Fish Springs Solar Project, like Dan said, it is going to be constructed in two phases. Phase 1 being 100 megawatts of solar, accompanied by a 25 megawatt 4-hour AC coupled battery system that is currently contracted under a power purchase agreement with NV Energy and does have PUC approval. This phase is expected to go commercial operational December of 2021. The whole project will be located on 2 blocks of private land, making up close to 2,200 acres, and be connected by a BLM right-of-way. And at the max build-out, the project will be able to provide enough electricity to power 75,000 homes. The facility will be located just 45 miles north of Reno, in between Highway 395 and Pyramid Lake, and is about 5.5 miles just east of the California-Nevada border. And as you can see here, there is 2 solar blocks. Phase 1, the 100 megawatt site, will make up all of block 1 and then a majority of block 2, and any subsequent phases would fill in the remaining portion of block 2 in the northeast corner. The solar blocks would be connected via a collection line and communications cables, as well as associated access road, which will be constructed utilizing an existing right-of-way grant associated with the Truckee Meadows Water Authority. And just some pictures of the site. On top, you have an image of the Fort Sage substation, which is the substation that the project will be interconnecting to, as well as Fish Springs Road, which will be one of the main access roads out to the site. So why did we choose this site? Basically, the land and resource and transmission were all favorable for the Fish Springs project. It was located, perfect. It was located next to an existing 345 kV transmission line, is adjacent to the project's substation, Fort Sage, owned by NV Energy, and has favorable topography, as well as a great solar resource for northern Nevada. So a little bit more information on the project construction. As I mentioned earlier, the project's going to be built in 2 phases. Phase 1 will begin in January of 2021 and will take about 10 months to construct, and any subsequent phases would take about 12 months to construct, depending on the size of the facility needed. Phase 1 traffic, approximately 250 workers at the peak of construction, which tends to be about 2 to 3 months, and any subsequent phases would be approximately 340 workers at peak. Grading would be relatively limited, and as for the solar array, as Dan mentioned, any vegetation will be mowed and posts will be driven directly into the ground. We've also made sure to include any buffers from any sensitive areas like wetlands and cultural resources, and we'll be utilizing on-site wells for water needed during construction, primarily used for dust control. So the local economy will receive quite a few benefits from the perceived solar project. There will be a sales and property tax increase, as well as numerous job creation and an increased economic activity. So I will go ahead and open up the floor to any questions to myself or the rest of the Nextera team.
I have a question.
Go.
Why 2 parcels?
Why 2 parcels?
Why didn't you try to combine them into one and just,
Because it's all BLM land in between the 2 parcels, and that can tend to be tricky.
the BLM will trade,
Well, that's not.
but that's fine. I just wondered why you do that. And I have questions about the response time in terms of, and you talk about, because of fire. I'm more
Absolutely.
concerned about fire, and you talk about mowing. How do you plan to mow?
I'll first address your question on fire. So our O&M operations team will be based in Reno, and there'll be a technician manning the facility 24 hours a day. So in any source of any fire, it would be immediately addressed.
But you're 45 miles away.
Yes. We would be utilizing a local volunteer fire department.
Okay. That
And
answers
as
that.
for your mowing question, I might have our engineer kind of speak to that point.
Dwayne McLeod, Nextera Energy. I'm the project engineer for the project. Mowing is, there'll obviously be mowing associated with construction, so to take stuff down before we can actually start building. And then we utilize a program where we, and again, it depends on exactly how quickly things grow. We have projects all over the country, as was mentioned, so some places it's more so than others, but generally we mow it to where we need to keep the vegetation below the edge of where the solar modules would track. So that's generally 18 inches max, and then generally try to mow it down to 6 inches, so we keep that in a controlled range, not only for fire safety, but as well as for to maximize generation.
Well, the reason I ask is that it looks like it's very close to a good sheep pasture.
We have utilized sheep on some projects, actually. It takes a surprising number of sheep to keep 3,000 acres clear. So it is something we do look at, though.
It takes about 10 sheep per cow. Okay, thank you.
Now we're counting sheep. It's getting late. All right. I have a question that for Dan or the client. How about the adjoining landowners? Has there been an effort to work with them that they feel that they're being landlocked, it looks like?
I believe Robert Thompson was there at the Citizen Advisory Board meeting. There was, from my understanding and my observation at that Citizens Advisory Board meeting, an informal meeting between him and the applicant in order to address some of the drainage issues. They do want to use his expertise, is what has been conveyed to me. I'll let the applicant discuss that in more depth.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I will add that we would take any of Robert Thompson's drainage comments into consideration when designing the final layout of the facility.
Okay. Any?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
No.
I have
Commissioner
a number of
Savicek.
questions. And maybe this is for staff initially. You referenced Connex storage on the property. What would these Connexes be used for?
I'm unsure in terms of what I remember from this report specifically. They mentioned that there would be 5 Connex boxes on the site.
But you don't know what the intended
I
use of
don't
these,
remember
and if they would
exactly
be
what-
permanent.
They would be permanent. I just don't remember the exact
Does the
use.
applicant have an answer for that, please?
Yes, the Connex boxes would be part of the operation of the facility, operation equipment.
What do you mean by that?
Storage?
Storage
Yes.
of what?
Of spare parts for the facility.
For the photovoltaics?
Yes.
Are they part of the battery storage operation?
No, that would be an additional.
And then you discussed, and this is for the applicant, you discussed that water would be used for on-site wells. Have those been drilled?
Those are currently existing.
There's existing wells. And this is for staff? This is a general comment under conditions on page 2. You reference, should any cairn or grave of Native American be discovered during site development, the project would be halted and the sheriff's department would be contacted, as well as the state historic preservation. I would ask you to consider that you will notify the tribe of any disturbance.
Okay, we can amend that.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, anybody else? I took this out of order. Is there any public comment on this?
There is. Robert Thompson, followed by Tom Hall.
Mr. Chair, while the speakers are coming up, I have a question and an observation on the issue about the Native American cairns and graves. That language that's in there is taken from the statutory scheme. So it's grafted straight from the statutes. In fact, we worked on that when I came back to planning 5 years ago. We put that in there and it tracks the statutory scheme. And I think the reason it's set up that way is because when you notify them, that triggers them to notify.
It does trigger, as long as there is tribal notification.
Right, because if otherwise, the next question I had, I was just whispering with Trevor, was which tribe? Because you're not exactly sure, and there may not be clear indications, and so that addition to that condition could be problematic.
Okay,
is what I was
as long as, okay, thank you. And I'll address that later when we bring it back for review.
Okay. Now, public comment.
Robert Thompson.
Thank you. I'm Robert Thompson. I live at 500 Indian Lane. I've been there for 23 and a half years, in the valley for 26 as of January. My experience in the valley is unbelievable. I notice everything and anything. That includes water, drainage, wind, snow, our dilapidating county roads that need help desperately. We have a few people in the Gerlach Road Department. One is retiring. That'll leave 2 laborers. This is not going to work with this project. We need more county people up there working on the roads, widening the roads. If we're going to have 250 workers driving in, there's going to be a lot of dust. You're going to have a water truck out there in the morning to subdue the dust. Otherwise, we get what we call a dust bowl effect. I saw that when I was on security for the Vidler Water Project. All the people would come in, and there is no wind, no breeze, just a very fine dust. Well, that's going to suffocate everybody. Also, I want to address, we're going to have solar panels on parcel number 074070-73, which adjoins my 40-acre parcel next to Fish Springs. I have 201 acres next to Fish Springs Ranch. I'm worried about the heat effect when this is put in because we get a southerly wind coming in the afternoon. And that could be a detriment, as I am now going to be planting more drought-resistant trees on the property starting this year. I'm getting rid of the alpine poplars. They're beautiful. They give you a lot of shade, but they consume a great deal of water. I look forward to working with the people from Nextera on the drainage issues, because I have watched more water come down out of the foothills, accumulated water on Section 33 in back of my house, which is the main solar farm area that they'll be starting with, and going down this, what we call the diagonal road, which is an ancient road put in probably over 100 years ago. And that's pretty much all I have to say right now. I'm going to be watching, and I hope this works out for everybody. The road issue, our roads need widening. We need gravel on the roads right now because of the snow that came down this past weekend. We had more potholes come up, and we just don't have a manager up there or a supervisor and the people to direct down to our area. They have the equipment, they have the money, they have the fuel. We need people. We need housing in Gerlach also. I'll be available for any questions you have at a later time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Hall, followed by Alexandra Profont.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Thomas J. Hall. I reside at 4725 Woodchuck Circle. I own 360 acres of land that's to the east of this area. We access our property on Fish Springs Road. And I can verify with Robert that the road needs repair and maintenance. We go up there quite a few often for camping and recreation. When we first bought our property up there, there was a landing strip. And you will note my hat, it's called Flying Fish Ranch. We named the area Flying Fish Ranch, and we want to protect it. We're concerned about the dust, fugitive dust. They're stripping a lot of the vegetation off this property. Those numbers are staggering, the cubic yards that will be removed off this property. What are they going to do for dust control? Will there be palliatives? Will there be some sort of dust control? Our land is to the east. We're going to be the depository of where this dust will come. We'd like you to think about dust. It's a massive grading project, and we'd like to have some discussion or conditions that the dust will be contained. Landscaping, I think landscaping around the parking area and where these COMEX buildings or boxes are going to be placed. Nevada's not a wasteland. You hear that a lot when they talk about Yucca Mountain. Nevada's not a wasteland. I don't think Fish Springs is a wasteland either. I think we should have some landscaping around the areas that will be congregated by cars and traffic and people. Why not some landscaping to make it look nice up there? Aviation is a concern. I'm a pilot. We flew to San Diego the other day, and in Pahrump Valley, there's a massive solar array, and on the sectional aeronautical chart for Las Vegas, there's a warning to pilots to be concerned about the solar flare, and we saw it. It's blinding. Someone ought to be concerned about how this is going to affect the flight plans into Reno. I don't see anything in that in the application. We also own land in Borrego Valley, which is in Southern California, San Diego. They stripped 40 acres of land of native vegetation. The diurnal winds came up and deposited all that landfill onto the next door property, and it was a major problem. The fire issue, you saw the fireman, Robert Thompson. He's the fire crew for all the Fish Springs. He's got one truck. It's pretty old, pretty dilapidated. I've seen it. I wouldn't drive in it, but he does. So I think there should be some caution. I don't have any problem with the economic development. It sounds like a great company. But when they come into Nevada, they ought to spend some time to make it beautiful, like we like to see our properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Robert.
Alexandra Profont, followed by Tom Corson.
Thank you. I received this right before the meeting, so I was not able to review it thoroughly. However, I did have some concerns, and in particular to the comments made about the Comex boxes and the storage. First of all, when you're designing an alternative energy off-grid system, the direct current collection systems often require deep cycle batteries in series. And to his comment about Nevada's not a wasteland, at present, whenever I believe a public utility is going in and anything affecting the FAA or a flight pattern is going in, there is a requisite cultural and historic resources survey to be done. I didn't see that that had been done with this project, and I would recommend it. And as far as triggering any Native American or First Nations persons' feedback, I have learned through the years in dealing with them myself that they still consider themselves, on many levels, a type of monarchy, and they don't just respond to plans being sent to them. They actually would prefer to have an invitation sent to them formally to all of the local tribal chairmans or colony chairmans, is something that I would highly suggest you do if indeed you would like to trigger a response instead of just make sure that you sent them the information. Finally, it's come to my attention that in the Residential Disclosure Guide of Nevada Real Estate, which does not just cover residential real estate, but there's no net regarding disclosures. And in the environmental hazards, one of the disclosures that's required right now, which would be a cause for concern for me, especially if they decide to sell any of these assets out of their portfolio, is that any groundwater or underground storage tanks, if indeed we do not, under part of the conditional use in this approval, understand exactly what the direct current electricity energy storage is going to be and exactly where it will be located and how or if it will impact any BLM right-of-way, I would suggest you carefully consider, because it may end up being a liability to the county. Thank you.
Tom Corson, followed by Ragnar Kunert.
Tom Corson, 150 Timberline View Court, Reno. Thank you for listening to me. I'd be very concerned about fire, and this being a special use permit, you could require them to put a fire buffer in. Between the setbacks would be a great place to put it, between their fence and their actual panels. We saw all the fires in California and the Paradise. This is such a remote area, and it's a volunteer fire department. If a fire starts up there in the high winds, there's no way they're going to be able to contain a fire. It's just going to go wild, and it's going to be over in Susanville or farther north. So I'd really encourage the board to consider a fire buffer, and it should be worded that it has to be maintained so they don't just let weeds grow up and rock. I'd also encourage the board to be very specific on working with drainage, and the neighbors don't just vaguely word it in there that we'll let them work with each other. You need to have things in place that can trigger enforcement, because I've been on zoning boards before, and once you grant the project, if it's not specifically in there, they won't work with your people. So I would really be specific on that. And as far as Native American graves, if they're pounding posts in the ground, how are they going to know if they're not going right through a grave? Are you going to require them to do a ground radar where the posts are going to be so you could see a grave underground? I mean, you're saying if they uncover one, if they're just pounding things in the ground, you're not going to uncover a grave. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ragnar Kunert.
I'm Ragnar Kunert. I live in Reno at 1520 King Edward Drive, and I own several hundred acres west of this facility. And I have a couple of questions here. Has an overall environmental impact study been done on this project? Secondly, I have a question. Who will retain ownership of the land underneath? Will it remain Fish Springs, or will it be owned by Next Era Energy? And what is going to be the impact on our utility rates? At what price is this company going to produce electricity? And what is going to be the impact on our electric utility rates? That's all I have.
No further public comment.
Anybody else wish to speak on this?
I have a comment. I have direct experience.
Come up to the microphone and state your name and address.
I have direct experience with NV Energy on Steamboat 212 going up to
You need
Mount
to
Rose.
start your speech when you get in front of the microphone. We
Oh, sorry.
can't hear as you're mumbling as you're coming up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I have direct experience with Steamboat 212 going up to Mount Rose with NV Energy, and their vaults are faulty. And we've had that problem for 10 years or more. I have not heard anything about the construction of the vault going between the two properties. That's critical, because if that vault is leaking, then you're going to have explosions like you've never seen. So that's it.
Thank you.
Engineering 101.
Sir, will you please fill out a comment card for me?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
All right. Seeing there's no further public comment, I'm going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Civilich.
Thank you. Given what Council Edwards said, I withdraw my statement regarding notification of tribal properties, so,
Okay.
tribal councils, excuse me.
Any further comment on this?
I have a question of staff. Is it appropriate to request information from the FAA about projects like this as far as takeoffs and landings out of Reno?
Staff did provide the application to the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority for comment. We'd received no comment at this time.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and I just have a comment that I heard everything that the public had to say, and as you were saying it, I was going through the staff report, and it's all covered in the staff report. Your concerns about dust and so on and so forth, and fire protection, it's all been covered. So I hope that puts you a little bit at ease. Now, that being said, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion. Don't everybody jump at once.
I make a motion regarding special use permit case number WSUP 20-0001 Fish Springs Solar. I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission approve with conditions special use permit case number WSUP 20-0001 for Fish Springs Ranch LLC, having made all 5 findings in accordance with the Washoe County Code section 110.810.30.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Donchek and a second by Commissioner Civilich. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we move on to amendment of conditions, case number WSC 20-001 Falcon Ridge Fraternity. Wait a minute. Yeah.
Ridge, you're right.
Fraternity subdivision map, case number TM 14-003 Falcon Ridge.
Could we, Mr. Chair, could we allow for the chamber to clear before we?
Pardon?
Could we allow for the chamber to clear before we?
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to take a 10-minute break, or do you want to forge through?
I'm good.
Everybody good? Yeah. All right.
Okay, this, for possible action, hearing, and discussion to approve an amendment of conditions, to amend condition number 1R of tentative subdivision map, case number TM 14003 Falcon Ridge, to allow for 0-foot front and rear yard setbacks in lieu of the 10-foot setbacks within the Falcon Ridge development. This modification would be pursuant to Washoe County Code 110-40605 and Article 408, which allows variances of lot standards in a common open space subdivision in certain instances. And again, representing Washoe County, as you can see, we're giving them all of our work. Dan Kalan.
Boy, you guys are taking time off.
Dan Kalan, Washoe County Planning. For the record, we'll try and keep this one short. WAC 20-0001 Falcon Ridge. As Trevor mentioned, this was part of a request to modify the setbacks from the original TM 14-003, which originally requested to modify the front setbacks from 15 feet to 10 feet, the side setbacks from 5 feet to 0 feet, and the rear setbacks to leave it at 10 feet. This application is to further modify the setbacks from now a 10-foot front setback to a 0-foot front setback, and a 10-foot rear setback to a 0-foot rear setback. As you can see here, this is located at the Falcon Ridge subdevelopment, just south, on the south end of Sun Valley. This is a current subdivision map. As you can see, all of the parcels are postage sized, and therefore small, and more or less conforming to the size of the house that will be on them. So originally, this was submitted as a common open space development under Article 408. The purpose of Article 408 is to preserve or provide open space, protect natural and scenic resources, achieve a more efficient use of land, minimize road building, and encourage a sense of community. These proposed changes to the setback fit with this purpose. However, we did notice when we were going back through and reviewing this case file that the current conditions of approval require that the applicant connect to Whittakin Regional Park. As you can see, the outline, the highlighted blue area is the subdevelopment, and the red arrow that goes all the way across the hill there goes to Whittakin Park. We feel that this should actually read Wild Creek Park, which is adjacent to the subdevelopment. Public notice was sent to 62 affected property owners within 500 feet of the site. This was sent to the Sun Valley Citizens Advisory Board. They did not meet, nor did we receive any comment from the Citizens Advisory Board at this time. Therefore, staff is able to make all of the tentative subdivision map findings for this amendment of conditions, and therefore staff recommends approval of the requested amendment of conditions along with the change of conditions for the park connectivity. I provided a possible motion for the board to review, and I'm available for any questions if you have any. And I believe the applicant is here for a presentation.
Okay. I guess we need to go. Is there any public comment on this?
I think, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, did you say that the applicant also wanted to make a presentation?
Did you?
The applicant is here and would like to make a presentation.
Oh, he just wanted to make a presentation?
Yeah.
I thought you
Yes.
said he was just here to answer questions. Come on.
Thank you very much. Derek Wilson with Rubicon Design Group on behalf of the property owner, the applicant. Staff's done a good job. It's a fairly simple issue. I'm going to keep this as brief as I can. We regard this as kind of a cleanup. The goal of this project has always been to do a standard townhouse layout where there's a postage stamp type lot, the house occupies that, and then there's common open space around it. So we're not seeking to change the look, the layout, or the density of the project in any way. We're just trying to get it to conform to a standard townhouse type layout. There's open space around the perimeter of the project, so we're not going to be moving buildings closer to the property edge. It's all going to stay the same. So if anybody needs any clarification on that, I'll be happy to talk more, but I think Dan's done a good job, so thanks.
Thank you. All right. Any public comment on this?
No public comment.
Seeing as there's no public comment, I'm going to bring it back to the commission for any questions of staff or the applicant.
Mr. Chair, could you call for disclosures before you do your deliberations?
Okay, excuse me. Do we have any disclosures by commissioners, ethics or ex parte communications? Thank you for reminding me, Mr. Edwards.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Seville.
Thank you. To the applicant, thank you very much for the clarification because you provided a lot more clarity because I was very concerned about all these 0, 0, 0s. And so thank you. I'm a lot more comfortable now. Thank you.
Great.
Any further questions? Okay. I guess I'll call for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Seville.
I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and the information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Planning Commission approve amendment of conditions case number WAC 20-0001 for Falcon Ridge by Desert Wind LP, having made all 10 findings in accordance with the Washoe County Code section 110.608.25.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Seville, a second by Commissioner Doncheck. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion on the motion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
One opposed. So we don't need a majority on this.
Yeah, we do, but just a simple.
Yeah, my microphone is finicky here. No, you just need a simple majority, not a super majority for this.
So there's four for, one opposed. All right. Going to close the planning items and move to item 10, chair and commission items. Any future agenda items? Seeing none. Request for information from staff. Seeing none. Report on previous planning commission items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple items to report on. You may remember Silver Hills, that project that went on and on and on forever. It went
You have
back
to bring that up.
I'm sorry, I have to do this. It went back to Regional Planning Commission, failed a technical denial there, but was appealed to the governing board, and it was eventually approved by the governing board. Second item is the short-term rentals. It was heard recently by this planning commission that went to the county commission. The county commission gave direction to staff to work on a few items and bring it back. So it was, we don't have, in that regard, don't have anything else to report on the short-term rentals.
Great.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Legal or information items or updates?
It's finicky.
I'm gonna have to bring a hammer for this thing. No, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yes.
Okay, go to item 12, general public comment.
We have Alexandra Profont, followed by Mark Newman.
Thank you. I'm leaving you with a parting gift. It's the private activity bond program pamphlet, and I want you to note on page 4 and page 6, I outlined a couple of things to look at. Also, I picked up today, and I was told that this went out to all of the planners in the state of Nevada, but I wasn't sure who received it or not. It is the State Historic Preservation Plan update, and I believe it's on the governor's desk. I do not believe he's signed it yet. And I just wanted to point out, if you'd let a copy, let me know. And if we don't consider preservation planning on our behalf, then others will define it for us. And I don't know that we want that. I also wanted to mention that in the pamphlet, it states incentives to promote projects relative to historic preservation, and on page 4 and 6, that there are state incentives found in commercial projects and the development of rental housing, and to please consider the protection of property affiliated with natural person's right to protect their property relative to owner occupancy and due process found in eviction. And I bring that up because on June 7th, 2019, it was enrolled, and on June 12th, 2019, it was approved by the governor, and on July 1st, 2019 was when it became effective. It was known as Senate Bill 151, which removes all the provisions governing a summary eviction procedure for any tenant of a commercial premise. So essentially what that does is it introduces a conflict between a natural person's right to due process before being removed from their property versus a corporate person's right. And so I'd like you to think about that when we're revisiting the short-term rental ordinance. Thank you.
Mark Newman?
Good evening again. My name is Mark Newman, and I live in the Highland Ranch community. They're in the north end of Sun Valley. With all of the new houses that are going to be going in down at the far end of Highland Ranch Road and with the new development, I'd like to thank all of you tonight for keeping it low density. Through Highland Ranch coming down through Midnight, Lightning, Magenta, and then onto Sun Valley, 7th Street, heading into Sun Valley, it is now becoming a major traffic flow for people coming in from the North Valleys and the South Valleys, back and forth from Sparks and everywhere else. Through our neighborhood, what would I have to do to get some kind of a speed bump to slow down traffic through our neighborhood? Because during rush hour, it's not uncommon to see cars going 40 miles an hour and passing you in the neighborhood around blind corners. How can I go about getting speed bumps put in or stop signs to slow the traffic down? Because there's a lot of children still in our neighborhood that play on the streets and walk to school. That would be my comment. If we could get something done about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
No further public comment.
No more public comment. Is there any possibility we could get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh.
I was waiting for that one.
Thank you all very much.